Next up is a question from Linda. She says, my husband and I catch a lot of flack from our peers when we tell others that we combine our incomes. What do you say to people who believe that they need to protect their assets, in quotations?
So by saying, I just want to clarify, combining income sounds like they had combined their accounts.
Accounts is what I was reading into that.
Yeah, I even saw this. There was a episode released where George Camel was giving Graham a lot of trouble because Graham's getting married and talking about combining. And I thought they were looking at it in a way. I'm just going to tell my opinion, and then you can fill in the gaps on this. We work with a lot of people that come from different walks of life, and even you have young marriages, you have middle-aged marriages, and there's complexities to that. I think that if there's nothing wrong with if you're a young marriage, like I got married when I was 24 years old. I was broke as a joke, had nothing going on. That should be joint. That's easy. That's a no-brainer. Sure. You come into a marriage with nothing. You're both there. So you can do a joint account. There's no mess. There's no fuss to it. However, you come to get married when you're 42 years old and one spouse owns a business. Or think about Graham. I'll take his example a little further. Graham has built a multi-million-dollar portfolio, successful YouTube channel, done a bunch of real estate. I think it's completely understandable that he's going to have the complexity of that he's going to have individual accounts probably for all the assets that were created pre-marriage. But here's where I'm a little different. I think as soon as that marriage two becomes one, I think that now they ought to set up a joint account, and a lot of the income for the household, it doesn't matter who earned it once they're married. Now the stuff beforehand, it's all carved off, it's protected. It's got a different registration, but all the income now, put it in the joint account and let it rip, because I'm telling you, I'm always amazed. Like my household, I mean, my wife was very successful in the tech space while I was starting this company. So she paid the bills when my income went from right at six figures down to $19,000 the first year I was in business. We lived off of her income, but now there's a huge disparity in the fact that she's, we have, my autistic daughter, and then she's doing, she works for supports some of my businesses, but she's not working in the tech space like she was. It would be weird if she was having to come to me to ask for money because I'm the one that generates the lion's share of it. That would create a weird dynamic. I want the two become one, to be where she never feels like I'm keeping assets from her, and I wouldn't want, if she made all the money and I didn't make hardly anything, to feel like I had to go ask her for more money. It's just a weird power dynamic that I think is unnecessary. But you can respect the complexity of individual assets versus joint assets, but I do think there is something to two becoming one and creating a joint account and dumping all the earnings for the household in. Because when we do net worth by age and we do other things, we're talking about typically goals of like saving and investing 25%. Those are household goals. So it makes sense to kind of combine those things. So I think we gave respect to the complexity, but also the two becoming one and respecting the sanctity of that.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting questions, Linda, is your actual question was, what do I say about people talking about protecting assets, right? Like, do I need to have protection? Right where you ended is I love what you said. Inside of any healthy partnership has to be like really solid communication, right? Like you have to be on the same page about the things that you are trying to accomplish and ultimately what the money is being saved for and what the purposes are behind that. So I think one of the great things that I see healthy couples do, whether they keep their finances separate or they keep them joint, is they have the same goals. They're working on the same sheet of music in terms of what they're doing and why they're doing it. Now, that's not to say, even if your finances are combined, in your situation, you have one spouse that works outside the home and one spouse that works inside the home, that doesn't suggest that you should not still be building assets in both spouses' names. Like if one of you has a Roth IRA, but you can do a spousal Roth contribution, that's a great thing. One of you has a high income, one of you has a little side home income, but you do a solo 401k. That's a great thing. There's nothing wrong with building the asset so you have an not equalize, it won't work that way, but so that you're filling up both buckets. But what you're really doing there is you're optimizing the tax code and the tax system to benefit your household as much as you can. So it's less about like protecting the assets from each other, and it's more about making sure that we're protecting the interests of both parties in this enterprise that we're building up.
One final note that I wanted to clarify, because somebody's going to watch this and they're going to say, well, what about, because the legal side of it is if like a parent passes away.
Oh yeah.
And if my wife inherited, let's just say that she inherited $50,000, I'd let her set that account up as an individual account in her name, because under the law, the government treats that as inherited assets and gifts are separate. I would honor where the source of those funds came from, and the parents, if it was a legacy thing that they had passed on, I would honor that. And I always do that with clients too. When there's any type of inheritance or anything like that, I say, just so you know, this is protected legally. So before you just automatically dump it into the joint account, you might want to put a little fence around and let it be an individual account. And I think it's the intent, the source that goes into it. But if it's money being made in the household through labor or businesses and other things, I like that money being joint while you're married.